I always thought family was supposed to be your safe place, the people who would hold you up when the world knocked you down. But in my family, I learned early on that family could also be the people who clipped your wings before you ever had a chance to fly. My name is Isabella Martinez, though everyone just calls me Bella. I grew up in a household where appearances were everything, but affection was a rare commodity. My parents, Miguel and Teresa, worked hard to provide for us, but they were obsessed with reputation. How we looked to neighbors, how we compared to cousins, how our grades stacked up against friends. Love was conditional. Success was currency. And my older sister, Alina, was the golden standard I was always measured against. Alina was 2 years older than me, tall, effortlessly beautiful, with the kind of charm that made people lean in when she spoke. She could walk into a room and command attention without even trying. Teachers adored her. Family friends praised her. Even strangers seemed drawn to her magnetic smile. Me, I was the quiet one. The bookworm. The girl who preferred scribbling stories in notebooks to posing for pictures. I wasn't plain exactly, but when you grew up in Elena's shadow, you might as well have been invisible. I remember once when I was 12, a family friend came over. She looked at Alina and said, "Oh, Alina, you're going to break so many hearts one day." Then she turned to me, hesitated, and said, "Bella, you'll be very smart, I'm sure." It was like that my whole life. Compliments for Alina, comparisons for me. She was the rose. I was the thorn. Our relationship was complicated. Alina wasn't cruel all the time, but she had this way of reminding me where I stood. She'd borrow my clothes without asking, then roll her eyes if I protested. She'd interrupt me at family dinners, turning the spotlight back to herself. And the worst part? My parents enabled it. If we argued, my mom would sigh and say, "Bella, let it go. You know how your sister is?" As if being the younger one meant my feelings mattered less. I internalized it. I told myself I just wasn't meant to shine like Alina. My role was to support, to fade into the background, to keep peace. But inside me there was always this small voice whispering, "One day you'll matter too." College was my escape. I got into a good school out of state, while Alina stayed closer to home. For the first time, I wasn't Elena's little sister. I was just Bella, and in that new space I found pieces of myself I never knew existed. I joined the literature club, started publishing short stories in the campus magazine, and even worked up the courage to read my poetry at open mic nights. That's also where I met Daniel. Daniel wasn't the loudest guy in the room, but he had this quiet confidence that made me feel safe. He was studying architecture with ink-stained fingers from sketching buildings in his notebook. He listened when I spoke, really listened, and never made me feel like I had to compete for his attention. Our love grew slowly, like roots spreading under the soil, steady and strong. By junior year, we were inseparable. He met my quirks with patience, encouraged my writing, and told me I was beautiful in a way that felt real, not performative. For the first time, I felt chosen. Of course, bringing Daniel home to meet my family was nerve-wracking. I still remember the first dinner. Alina showed up late, sweeping into the room like a queen making an entrance. She eyed Daniel up and down, then smiled too sweetly. "So this is the famous boyfriend," she said, tilting her head. "I have to admit, Bella, I didn't expect someone this handsome. Good for you." Her words were framed as a compliment, but the tone was sharp, like she was surprised I could land someone like him. Daniel, ever gracious, just smiled and shook her hand. Throughout dinner, Alina kept steering the conversation back to herself. Her job prospects, her latest gym routine, her dating life. My parents hung on every word. And when I tried to share about a short story that had been published, my dad glanced at me for a second before asking Alina another question. I wanted Daniel to see me, to see us. But instead, he was getting front row seats to the family dynamic I'd lived with my whole life. When we left, I apologized. He squeezed my hand and said, "Bella, you don't have to apologize for their behavior. I see you. And I love you." Those words carried me through so many long nights. By the time we graduated, Daniel and I had been together for 4 years. He proposed one chilly December evening in the park where we used to walk after class. Snowflakes were falling, His hands were trembling, and when he knelt down and opened the ring box, I burst into tears before he could even finish asking. "Yes," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Yes, 1,000 times." I thought my heart might burst with joy. For once, the spotlight wasn't on Alina. It was on me, and it was the happiest moment of my life. We told my family the following weekend at a dinner gathering. My mom clapped her hands. My dad gave Daniel a firm handshake, and Alina. Well, Alina plastered on a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Wow, Bella," she said, sipping her wine. "I never thought you'd be the first to get engaged." "Guess you beat me to it." It sounded lighthearted, but there was an edge, a flicker of something sharp and bitter. At the time, I brushed it off. I wanted to believe she'd come around, that maybe she'd even be happy for me. But deep down, I knew better. As wedding planning began, the cracks in our family's facade grew wider. Alina offered to help, but her version of helping meant critiquing every choice I made. "Are you sure about that dress? It's simple. Maybe too simple. Peonies. Roses are more traditional. Your bridesmaids' dresses are lovely, but will they flatter me?" She said it with a laugh, but I knew she wasn't joking. My mom would defend her. "She just wants the best for you, Bella." But it didn't feel that way. It felt like Alina was trying to make the wedding about her. Daniel noticed too. "You don't have to let her get to you," he said one night as we curled up on the couch. "This is your day. Ours, not hers." I nodded, but a part of me feared he didn't truly understand the weight of Elena's shadow. It all led up to one particular evening off family dinner at my parents' house a few weeks before the wedding. We were supposed to go over last-minute details, finalize the seating chart, and just enjoy a meal together. But that night would become the turning point of my life. I didn't know it yet as I walked up the steps to my childhood home, clutching Daniel's hand for reassurance. I didn't know that Alina was about to say something that would shatter the thin layer of peace we'd been holding on to. And I certainly didn't know that Daniel would walk in at just the right moment to hear it. But I felt it in the pit of my stomach, that uneasy churning that told me storms were brewing, as I pushed open the door and heard Elena's laugh echoing from the dining room. I took a deep breath and told myself, just survive tonight. Smile, nod, keep the peace. I had no idea that survival was about to turn into something much darker. The night of the dinner felt like walking into a theater where everyone already knew their lines, except me. My parents' house glowed like a set candles flickering along the hallway console, the faint smell of cilantro and roasted garlic curling out from the kitchen. The dining room dressed with white linen like an eager audience. I told myself to breathe, to count the sounds, to find an anchor. The clink of plates, the soft hum of my mother's favorite bolero from an old speaker, the glossy laughter of my sister. Daniel squeezed my hand at the door. "Whatever happens, it's us," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. I nodded. "Whatever happens, it's us." I wanted to stitch those words into my skin. We stepped inside, and my mother appeared with open arms and lipstick that always left a print on your cheek no matter how fast you pulled away. "Mi amor," she sang to me, then turned to Daniel, her smile stretching to a stage grin. "Our architect," she said, as if she'd cast him herself. Come. Everyone's waiting." Everyone meaning Alina. She was in the dining room, leaned back in my father's chair like she'd moved in. She was wearing a cream blouse that caught the light like silk and a necklace that had once belonged to our grandmother. She twirled the pendant between her fingertips and raised a glass when she saw us. "Finally," she said with a playful sigh. "We were about to start without you." "We were waiting for the bride," my father corrected, standing to kiss my head. He smelled like cologne and the faint metallic temps of bourbon. He squeezed Daniel's hand with performative vigor. Son Elena's eyes flicked over me and landed on Daniel, sharpened with interest in a way that might have looked sisterly if I didn't know better. "Daniel," she sang, "did Bella tell you I put together a little tasting for the champagne? I figured you'd appreciate the structure and the finish." She winked. "Since you're an architect?" There it was, the need to place herself at the center of even my bubbles. Daniel smiled politely. "Thanks, Alina," he said. "That's thoughtful." I watched her face brighten at the compliment that didn't belong to her. I felt the first pinch of tension at the base of my skull. My mother herded us into seats. The table was scattered with papers and samples ribbons for the bouquets, swatches for linens, a tablet blinking with a spreadsheet. I had my own folder in my tote, labeled and tabbed in calm pastels. But it felt juvenile next to the gleam of Elena's curated display. She'd always been the head cheerleader of real-life pom-poms made of other people's plans. "Okay," my mother said with a clap. "Ever the director. We go through menu, seating, music, then logistics for the church. Quick, efficient. We eat. We toast. Easy." "Elena, why don't you run us through your notes?" my father suggested, folding his hands like he was at a board meeting. My notes? My wedding. But Elena's notes? I glanced at Daniel. He tilted his head toward my bag, the bag with my tabs and lists. "Speak up," his eyes told me. "This is yours." I cleared my throat. "I actually brought perfect." Elena cut in, tapping her tablet awake. "So I've spoken with the venue. They can add hanging greenery if we upgrade, which we should. And they can move the ceremony inside if the weather." "Elena," I said a little louder than I meant to, "I wanted to start with the guest list. There are a few people we need to move around." She blinked. That expression of flute surprise that was really, "You're interrupting me?" Then she smiled. "Of course, Belle. Whatever makes you comfortable." Belle, she only called me that when there was an audience. I pulled out my folder. My hands trembled. I flattened them against the table and steadied my breath. "I'd like to seat Aunt Carmen and her kids closer to us," I said, "and move the Garcias back near the entrance. They're distant relatives, and Tia Carmen has to leave early." My mother's mouth pinched. "The Garcias will be offended." "They barely know us," I replied softly. "Aunt Carmen raised me on Saturday nights while you both worked. I want her near me." Elena twisted the pendant around her neck. "The Garcias are influential at church. It's optics." "I'm not marrying optics," I said, fighting to keep my voice level. "I'm marrying Daniel." My father leaned back, considering me as if I'd revealed a flaw in my quarterly report. "Optics matter, Bella." "Not to me," I said, then almost whispered, "Not this time." Silence spread like a shadow. Daniel reached under the table and hooked his ankle around mine. "You've got this," his touch said. Elena switched tactics. "It's just seating," she said airily. "Don't stress. You get to be the princess. We handle the rest." She patted my hand, and the patronizing weight of it sent a flare of heat through me. "I don't want to be a princess," I said, pulling back. "I want to be present." Her smile tightened. "You're very sensitive tonight, Belle. Is it your dress again?" "I told you I knew a better seamstress." "My dress is perfect," I said. "What's not perfect is me finding out you texted our florist to change the bouquet style without asking." Color rose in her cheeks. She parted her lips, and for a moment I saw the woman underneath the performance uncertain, caught. Then the expression hardened. "I improved it," she said lightly. "You're welcome." "You undermined me," I said, my voice thin with humiliation. The word hung between us like a wire. Undermined. My mother tipped her head. "Elena has taste. Bella, it's good. She's involved." I swallowed. A metallic tense hit my tongue. Daniel leaned forward. "We appreciate help," he said calmly, "but Bella and I have made choices together. We'd like them respected." Elena's eyes flicked to him, narrowed just a fraction. I saw at the unspoken resentment that I'd beat her to a life milestone. The way Daniel's quiet gentleness made him a prize, too, in the city square auction of our family. "Of course," she said, syrup again, then lifted her glass. "To respecting Bella's choices." We clinked, because what else was there to do? The sound of Crystal kissing Crystal had never felt so brittle. Dinner came in platters, steaming and fragrant. Arroz con palo. Black beans glossy with onion. Plantains caramelized to velvet. Normally, it would have steadied me the choreography of passing plates, the accidental touch of knuckles, the music of family. But tonight, every scrape of spoon against china grated. Every comment landed like a pinprick. So Alina said as my mother set a dish in front of us, "What are we thinking for the first dance?" I sent over a playlist. We already picked a song. I said, "The one Daniel and I danced to at that little jazz place after finals." Alina smiled, a crescent moon with teeth. "Oh, that self-indulgent one." She laughed, a quick chiming thing. "Kidding, kind of?" My mother glanced at me. "What's the song?" "The Nearness of You," Daniel said, his tone warm. "It means a lot to us." "It's slow," Alina observed, as if diagnosing. "Very lounge." She took a sip. "But if you love it, it's ours," I said. "That's the point." My father cleared his throat. "Elena's right about tempo," he said, not looking at me. "A livelier one sets a better tone for a party." A pressure built behind my eyes. "Can we? Can we not turn every choice into a debate?" Alina shrugged. "We're trying to help." "I don't need you to fix my life," I said, the anger quiet but molten. "I just need you to show up for it." That made my mother stiffen. "Bella," she warned softly. I set my fork down. "I'm sorry. I took a breath and thought of the snow in the park when Daniel proposed, how it caught in his lashes like stars. "I just want this to feel like us." "Then stop making it complicated," Alina muttered, barely under her breath. My head snapped up. "What?" She lifted her shoulders in a delicate shrug as if she hadn't said anything at all. I looked to my parents, but their faces were masks, unbothered, expectant. Already weary of the girl who always needed too much, I folded my napkin into smaller squares until it was a hard little brick in my hands. Conversation moved to cake flavors and transportation and who would read which scripture in church. I found myself nodding along even when the suggestions erased my choices. Even when Elena's voice blended with my mother's until they sounded like one connected mouth deciding my life. When my father suggested that Daniel ride to the church with him and the men tradition. He said I heard the final fray inside me give way. "No," I said. "Daniel and I will ride together." My father looked displeased. "It's unorthodox." "So is marrying the love of your life?" Daniel said mildly. And if I hadn't been bracing myself, I would have laughed. Instead, Alina tilted her head, studied us like a painting. "You're very stubborn lately," she said to me. "It's not a good color on you." "Neither is envy," I shot back before I could stop myself. The table froze. Alina went very still. Her lips quivered once, almost imperceptibly, before settling into a thin smile. "Excuse me," she said, rising. She smoothed her blouse like she was erasing fingerprints. "I think the champagne from the tasting is still in the kitchen. I'll grab it." She left. My mother's eyes were daggers. "You will apologize," she said. Low. I stared at my plate. "Why?" "Because we do not accuse family of ugly things at our table." "We don't have to accuse it," I said softly. "It breathes with us." Daniel placed his hand over mine. "I'll help Elena with the champagne," he said, perhaps thinking some gentle bridge could still be built tonight. He stood and moved toward the kitchen. "Daniel," I began, but he was already gone. My father exhaled through his nose. "This is supposed to be joyful," he said, as if joy were a switch I hadn't flipped. I stood. "I need a minute," I murmured and slipped down the hall. The house felt narrower without the noise. I passed the framed photos, the ones where Alina shone, and I hovered at the edge of the frame like a smudge. My reflection flashed by in the glass. I looked like someone else. The tight mouth, the pleading eyes. I turned into the den to catch my breath. When the door clicked softly behind me, I startled. Alina stepped in, closing it with the careful finality of someone sealing a vault. There was no champagne in her hands. Only that necklace, the one she kept worrying like a rosary. "Nice ambush," she said, her voice a different animal without witnesses, lower, darker. "Calling me envious in front of them. Very brave, baby sister." "I didn't ambush you," I said. The word sister landed heavy. "You've been undercutting me for months." "Undercutting." She laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. "Please." "If I didn't step in, you'd be serving hot dogs out of a food truck and reading your vows off a napkin." "Maybe that would be honest," I shot back. "At least it would be ours." Her eyes flickered with something raw. then shuddered. She took a step closer. We were face to face, breath to breath. "You don't know how lucky you are, do you?" she murmured. "To have all this attention for once. To have him." I felt a chill skate down my spine. "What are you talking about?" She tilted her head as if listening to music I couldn't hear. "You were always the soft one," she said. "The needy one. You eat love like you're starving, and then you act surprised when you choke." She smiled, and I saw the little girl who used to steal my diary and read it aloud to her friends. "But this fantasy where you're the leading lady, it's not real." "Stop," I whispered. My hand tightened around the back of a chair. "Alina, stop." She stepped closer still, the pendant brushing my chest. Her voice went very gentle. "You don't deserve it, Belle." The words slashed the air. I felt them raw and shock bright, like stepping on glass. For a second, I couldn't breathe. "What?" Her eyes glittered. "Dear me dash to dash say dash it dash again." "You don't deserve love." Time stuttered. The room pressed in around us. Somewhere far away, a pot lid rattled in the kitchen. I stared at my sister and saw not the curated woman she presented to the world, but the arsenal she kept between her ribs, every little arrow she'd aimed at me for years. "You're not built for it," she continued softly, "a lullaby with a blade. You cling. You dramatize. You make everything heavy. Guys don't want that, Bella. They want me." She smiled almost apologetically. "They always have." A ringing started in my ears. Hot, embarrassed tears pricked, which only enraged me more. "You don't get to tell me what I deserve. I'm telling you the truth," she said. "He's a nice man, but nice men get tired. And when he does, he realizes you're not a myth but a mouth that never stops needing." She lifted one elegant shoulder. "He'll go where air is easy." "I'm not a burden," I said, the words tasting like iron. "Of course you are," she said sweetly. "You've always been. Why do you think Mom never invited your friends to stay for dinner? Why do you think Dad took you to fewer? That's enough," I snapped, the shout ripping out of me before I could leash it. "God, Alina, what is wrong with you?" "What's wrong?" she replied. "Is that for once the spotlight isn't angled to catch me? For once our family's eyes are on the quieter daughter, the one who never asked for more, and suddenly she's getting it all." Her smile went crooked. "I am simply reminding you of the order of things." "The order is cruel," I said, voice shaking, "and I won't live inside it anymore." She studied me like a coach, eyeing a player who'd finally decided to take a shot. Pity slid into her expression, as condescending as a pat on the head. "You can rehearse bravery," she said, "but you can't sustain it. It's not in your bones." I laughed one short, disbelieving bark. "You don't even hear yourself. You sound like a villain in a bad movie." She leaned in, breath warm, whisper coiled. "Truth is never pretty." Then, clearly, in a voice she knew could puncture, "You don't deserve love." "You don't get to decide that," I said, heat crawling up my throat. "I already have," she replied, a feline satisfaction passing over her face. "And so has he." I froze. The words slid under my skin like ice. "What do you mean?" She tilted her head, considered the nail of her index finger. "Didn't he tell you?" she asked with soft falseness. "About the messages. The late study sessions that weren't always so late. The way he looked at me last Thanksgiving." My heart knocked once, hard. "You're lying," I said. But some terrified part of me rewound a reel of harmless gestures, Daniel laughing at one of her asides, Alina squeezing his forearm while passing behind his chair. The slow unfurling of something like a competition I refused to name. She smiled, beatific. "You're right, little sister. I'm lying. That's what you cling to. Yes? That I'm a liar and you're a saint, and your man is a monastery. Sing yourself to sleep with it." She stepped back, shaking her head as if disappointed in a child. "You don't deserve love because you don't understand it. You kneel to it. You beg. That's not desire. That's worship. It repels." "I understand love," I said, barely more than a breath. "I understand it better than you ever will." "Do you?" she murmured. Then why is he? The door handle clicked. I didn't see Daniel at first because my eyes were still locked on her face. But then I heard the tiniest intake of breath, the sound he made when a line he'd drawn in pencil on tracing paper went exactly where he wanted it to end. My body knew him before I turned. He stood in the doorway, shoulders rigid, a bottle of champagne clutched in one hand at a foolish angle. He looked from Alina to me, from me to Alina, as if trying to align a geometry problem that had just introduced a new shape. His eyes, those soft, steady eyes, were wide with something I couldn't parse. Shock, hurt, calculation. He'd heard. I knew it because silence had that flavor, the kind that tastes like pennies and lightning. He'd heard the sentence hanging in the room like smoke. Alina was quicker than me. She moved toward him with a gasp that would have made an acting teacher applaud. "Daniel," she breathed, hand touching her throat, then reaching toward his forearm. He flinched, almost imperceptibly, and her hand fell. "Daniel," I said, finally finding my voice, though it sounded like I'd borrowed it from a stranger. My knees felt unreliable. He set the bottle on the bookshelf very carefully, as if it might explode. He didn't look at it. He looked at me, and then at Alina, and the muscles in his jaw ticked once. "What did you hear?" Alina asked, sugar dripping from every syllable. My tone things came out wrong. She laughed, fragile. "You know how sisters are." His gaze didn't waver. "I heard you say she doesn't deserve love." The room seemed to lean in. Outside, a car rolled by, the sound of its tires on asphalt, a soft shush. As if someone had put a finger to the world's lips. Alina's mouth parted. It was a joke," she said, then pivoted. I was trying to provoke her, to toughen her up. "She's so sensitive." It was a word I had been called my whole life, like it was a diagnosis. Hearing it now made my skin break into 1,000 sparks. I took a step toward Daniel. "It wasn't a joke," I said, throat tight. "It never is." He looked at me, and I saw a war move across his face. Love, anger, protection, a flicker of something else I hated that I recognized. The long, exhausted stare of a man who'd tolerated too many small cuts to keep a peace that wasn't worth the blood. "Alina," he said, voice low, "that's cruel." She blinked, and for a flash I saw surprise, a real one, as if she'd expected him to fold around her like everyone else. Then her spine straightened. "Cruel is letting her go through life thinking she's something she's not. You don't know our family like I do." She turned to me, the pity back practiced. "I'm protecting you. From happiness." I asked, the word hitching. "From being chosen. From being loved." She flinched, not in guilt, but in irritation at the word loved being placed somewhere she hadn't assigned it. "From humiliation," she said. I laughed, the sound ragged. "Newsflash, Elena, this is humiliation. Right here. Your mouth. My heart." Daniel's hand went to his hair, raked through it. He looked at me. "Bella, I don't," I said softly. The tiny voice inside Mitha, one I'd coddled and shushed for years, rose now, steadier than the rest of me. "Don't defend anyone. Don't translate their cruelty. Don't make it smaller just to keep the room calm." The den door creaked, and my mother's head appeared, followed by my father's heavier presence. "What's taking so long?" my mother asked, smile pre-installed, before she took in our faces. Her smile slid. "What's happening?" No one answered. The three of us stood in a triangle tense as a tripwire. My father's eyes went to the bottle. "Champagne," he ventured, hopeful, ridiculous. Alina moved first. She pasted on a smile so bright it might blind. "We were just reminiscing," she said. "Sisters." She reached for my shoulder, and I stepped out of reach. "Is everything okay?" my mother asked, voice sharp now, suspicion turning her words into weapons. "No," Daniel said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The word landed with the weight of a hammer. My mother blinked. "What do you mean, no?" she asked, her gaze skittering between Alina and me like a trapped fly. "We are having a nice evening." "We are." Alina told Bella she doesn't deserve love, Daniel said. The air left the room with a whoosh. My father made a sound, a cough, or a choke. It was hard to tell. My mother's face arranged itself into disbelief. Alina would never, she said flatly. I heard it, he replied. His eyes did not move from my parents. With my own ears. Alina laughed again, brittle. He misheard. It was context. A joke. She took it the wrong enough. My father snapped, the word cracking like a ruler on a desk. The room stilled, trained by decades of that tone. He looked at me, at Alina, at Daniel. He was calculating damage to the facade. We are not airing family ugliness tonight. We have neighbors. We have reputation. I finished for him the taste of the word sour. Of course. My mother's eyes landed on me, the familiar rebuke unfurling. Bella, don't start. Start? I whispered. I didn't start this. I turned to Alina. You did. She lifted her chin, defiant. Someone had to. Someone had to break me first, so you didn't have to see me stand, I said. The truth of it pulsed in the room, strange and undeniable. My father's jaw tightened. My mother reached for Elena's hand. We will talk about this later, she said pointedly, which always meant we will talk about how to make Bella smaller later. Daniel looked at them like he was beholding a map he'd never really read until now, the borders suddenly clear. No, he said again, still soft. We will not talk about this later, like it's a footnote. We will acknowledge what just happened. I acknowledged it, Alina said. I said it was a joke. Calling cruelty a joke doesn't turn it into one, I said. My voice surprised Meekum, almost clinical. Maybe because I had finally reached the eye of the storm, and in the eye, everything is eerily still. You meant it. Her eyes flashed. Fine, she said. Scorched earth now. I meant it. Happy. I meant every word. You don't deserve love. You don't deserve him. She cut herself off, lips clamping. The room leaned forward collectively. He's what? Daniel asked the question, quiet, razored. She smoothed her hair, realizing too late she'd stepped 1 inch beyond her intended line. He's too good for her, she finished, choosing the safer cruelty. The pain was a clean slice. I almost admired it for its efficiency. I pressed my palm to my chest, feeling my heart beating like a captive animal. Get out, Daniel said. We all turned. His face had changed. The mild kindness was gone, replaced by something cold and immovable. I'd seen him like that once when a contractor tried to cut corners with the foundation on a project. He'd stood in the mud and refused to let the concrete pour until the rebar was corrected. Even with the sky ink dark and rain threatening. This was that man, now the one who understood that some things, if built wrongly, will collapse and bury you. Excuse me? Alina said, astonishment cracking her voice. Get out of this room, he repeated, voice deep. Right now. Before you say another thing you can't ever take back. My mother bristled. How dare you? Daniel looked at her, and even she fell silent. I am asking for basic human decency, he said. Can this house offer it? My father's mouth opened and closed. Elena's eyes glistened not with remorse, but with rage and the humiliation of being told no. For 1 second, I saw the little girl who used to lock me out of our shared room, the triumphant click of the door. She looked at me, and I knew she wanted me to save her, to smooth this out like I always had. To make a joke, to tell everyone it was fine. I did not move. She turned on her heel and left, head high, perfume streaming behind her like an alibi. My mother followed in a rustle of indignation. My father lingered, his gaze flickering over me like a judge's. Then he exhaled and left too. The door closing with a soft, damning snick. The quiet afterward was an animal that didn't know where to put itself. I stared at the floor. A knot swelled in my throat. The words "you don't deserve love" echoed inside, touching all the tender places that had been waiting for a sentence like that to confirm what they already feared. Daniel stepped closer. Bella, he said. I shook my head. Don't, I managed, tears finally spilling, hot and humiliating. Just don't say anything yet. He reached out, stopped, let his hand hover, honoring the boundary my pain had just drawn. "Okay," he whispered. We stood in that small room with the champagne warming on the shelf and the family photos watching, and I felt a split open inside me, a clean, bright line that divided before from after. I didn't know yet what would fill it, only that something had broken and something else, something necessary, had begun. From the dining room came the false clatter of plates, my mother's brittle laugh, my father's attempt at normal conversation, Elena's voice pitched too high, telling some story. The house was already pretending nothing had happened. But I had heard it. Daniel had heard it. And once truth makes a sound, you can't unhear it. You can only decide what to build where it fell. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. "I need to get through the rest of this night," I said quietly, amazed that my voice could still function. "Then we'll talk. We'll do whatever you need," he said. I nodded. I straightened my blouse. I picked up the bottle like a prop I had to carry on to the next scene. When I met his eyes, I saw the promise he'd made me at the door, remade now in something harder. "Whatever happens, it's us." We walked back into the dining room together. The table was freshly set with dessert plates no one had wanted a moment ago. My mother pasted the smile back on. My father cleared his throat and lifted his glass. Alina watched me with polished indifference, as if she were observing a stranger across a room, deciding whether to bother remembering their name. I sat. Daniel sat beside me. I could feel my sister's words like a welt, but under it I felt something else, thin but present. Like the first line of a song. It was not forgiveness, not yet. It was resolve. "Champagne," I said, my voice even. "Of course," my mother replied, relieved at the script returning. "Poor Bella," I poured. The bubbles rose, glittering, effervescent, trying their best to climb. The next few days after that dinner felt like living inside a bruise. On the surface, I could function. Work, errands, emails, smiling at strangers when required, but underneath every movement ached. Alina's words replayed at odd moments, like a song stuck in my head. "You don't deserve love." Sometimes they whispered when I brushed my teeth. Sometimes they shouted when I tried to sleep. And Daniel, well, he was gentle, careful, almost too careful. He'd ask me how I was feeling every hour, as if checking the temperature of something fragile. I loved him for it, but it also reminded me of how badly I'd been hurt. We didn't talk much about that night. Not yet. It felt too raw, too exposed. I think we both needed to let the dust settle before we touched the wreckage. But the silence had weight, and every time Elena's name appeared on my phone with a new message, "We need to talk." "You misunderstood." "Don't ruin everything." My stomach twisted. I ignored her. For once in my life, I ignored her. But my family, they didn't ignore it. 2 days after the dinner, my mother called. Her voice was brisk, managerial. "We need to meet Bella. Sunday afternoon. Your father, me, you, and Alina. We need to clear the air before this wedding." I didn't want to. Everything in me screamed to stay away. But some dutiful daughter reflex had me agreeing before I even thought about it. Daniel offered to come, but I shook my head. "This is between them and me," I said. So Sunday came, and I drove to my parents' house with dread clawing my chest. Elena's car was already in the driveway. My parents were waiting in the living room like it was a courtroom. Elena sat on the couch, ankles crossed, sipping tea like she hadn't detonated a bomb days earlier. "Bella," my father began, in his no-nonsense tone, "we've spoken with your sister. She admits she went too far. She was, what's the word, provoking?" "Provoking." I repeated, my voice sharp. "She told me I don't deserve love." "That's not provoking. That's cruelty." Alina set her cup down delicately. "I said something harsh. I regret how it came out. But you're exaggerating the intent." I laughed bitterly. "Exaggerating?" Daniel heard it too. "He's not exaggerating. You meant every word." My mother raised her hand like a referee. "We are not here to assign blame. We are here to restore peace before your wedding. Alina has apologized. Now you need to accept it." My jaw tightened. That's not an apology. That's spin. Elena's eyes gleamed with irritation. You always twist things. You've always been dramatic, Bella. This is exactly what I meant. You suffocate people with your sensitivity. That's why I stop, my father barked. His gaze shifted to me. You will forgive your sister. You understand? I stared at him. The child in me, the one who'd always obeyed, trembled. But the woman in me, the one Daniel loved, the one who had finally begun to stand, straightened. No, I said softly. The room went still. My mother's mouth fell open. Alina blinked like I'd spoken a foreign language. No, my father repeated, voice incredulous. No, I said again, firmer. I won't forgive words she hasn't even taken back. I won't pretend for the sake of your reputation. Not this time. My mother's cheeks flushed. You will destroy this family with your pride. I shook my head. I didn't destroy anything. I just refused to keep pretending the cracks aren't there. Alina leaned forward, her mask slipping. You're making a fool of yourself. Do you really think Daniel is going to put up with this forever? He'll get tired, Bella. He'll see what I see. And that's when I felt it. The smallest seed of a suspicion I hadn't dared to water before. The way she said it, the certainty, the glimmer in her eyes. It wasn't just cruelty. It was something more. That night, back home with Daniel, I finally asked. We were in the kitchen, me chopping vegetables with too much force, him pouring wine. My hands shook so badly I set the knife down. Daniel, I said, my voice thin, I need you to be honest with me. Has Alina ever tried anything with you? He froze, bottle in hand. Slowly, he set it down. Why are you asking that? Because of the way she talks, I said, staring at the countertop. The things she hints at. I need to know if there's something I don't know. Silence stretched. My chest tightened. When I finally looked up, his eyes were troubled. She kissed me, he admitted quietly. The words hit like a blow. My knees nearly buckled. What? It was months ago, he said quickly. Last Thanksgiving. We were in the kitchen alone for 2 minutes. She cornered me, said some things, and kissed me before I could react. I pushed her away immediately. I told her never to do it again. And I didn't tell you because... He raked a hand through his hair, guilt etched into his face. Because I didn't want to hurt you. I thought it would make things worse between you two. And I thought, God, I thought if I ignored her, she'd... Stop. I felt sick. The room tilted. She kissed you, I repeated, hollow. Yes, he said firmly. And I didn't kiss her back. I swear to you, Bella, I never wanted her. Not for a second. You are the only woman I want. Always. Tears blurred my vision. A storm of emotions crashed inside me. Betrayal, rage, heartbreak, relief that he'd rejected her. Fury that she dared to cross that line. She made me feel crazy, I whispered. Like I was paranoid. Like I was exaggerating. And all along she was trying to. My voice broke. Daniel came around the counter, pulling me into his arms. I'm sorry, he murmured against my hair. I should have told you. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now I was protecting her. And she doesn't deserve it. I clung to him, sobbing. She tried to take you from me. She could never, he said fiercely. Never, do you hear me? But I did hear it, not just his words, but the confirmation of what I had always known in my bones. My sister wasn't just envious. She was dangerous. The next morning, I woke with clarity. Alina hadn't just insulted me. She had actively tried to sabotage my happiness, to steal the one good, pure thing in my life. And my parents, they would keep defending her, enabling her, as they always had. But I wasn't a child anymore. I had a choice. When my mother called again that afternoon, Bella, you need to smooth things over before the wedding. I cut her off. No, Mama, I said calmly. I'm not smoothing anything over. Alina crossed a line. She doesn't get to stand beside me at the altar and smile like she didn't try to ruin everything. She is not my maid of honor anymore. There was a stunned silence. Then my mother hissed, You will not disgrace this family like that. I swallowed hard. My voice trembled but held. This family disgraced itself the moment you chose appearances over the truth. I won't do it too. And I hung up. My hands were shaking, but my heart felt lighter than it had in years. That night, Daniel and I sat together on the couch, holding hands in silence. He kissed my knuckles, his eyes full of sorrow and love. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "that Elena's words are going to come back to her. She told me I don't deserve love, but she's about to see exactly how wrong she is." Daniel's brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" I looked at him, at the man who had chosen me every day, even when my family didn't. "I mean, she's not going to get away with this. Not with me, not with you, not with anyone." The air between us vibrated with unspoken promise. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I knew one thing. The wedding wouldn't just be a celebration. It would be a reckoning. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the storm. I was ready to unleash it. The morning of my wedding felt like waking into a storm you already knew would break. The sky was a perfect blue, sunlight spilling across the church courtyard, but inside me there was thunder. Every step I took toward that altar was also a step toward reckoning. Alina had not backed down. Despite my decision to remove her as maid of honor, she had shown up in a pale gold dress that looked dangerously close to white. My mother whispered to me in the dressing room, "She's family, Bella. Let her stand beside you." I had looked her square in the eyes and said, "No, not today. Not anymore." And for the first time, my mother had no reply. The pews filled with family, friends, co-workers, all dressed in their best. Murmurs swelled as people waited for the music to begin. My father stood stiff in his suit, ready to walk me down the aisle, his mouth a grim line. When the doors opened and I stepped out, gasps swept the room. Not for my dress, though it was lovely, but for the sight of me unshaken, holding my head high. I caught sight of Daniel waiting at the altar, his face lit with a smile that reached his eyes. He was my anchor, my reason. But out of the corner of my vision, I saw her. Alina, in that pale gold, seated in the front pew, her chin lifted in defiance. She wanted to remind me and everyone else that she was still here, still radiant, still unavoidable. I gripped my bouquet tighter and walked on. The ceremony unfolded like a dream. The readings, the hymns, the prayers, all a blur. What mattered was Daniel's hand in mine, the steadiness in his voice when he promised to love me through every storm. When it was my turn, I spoke words I had written late at night. Words that bared my heart. "You are the first person who ever saw me, Daniel. Truly saw me. Not as a shadow, not as a comparison, not as less. With you, I don't just exist, I shine. And I promise, for the rest of my life, to see you just as clearly, to love you just as deeply, and to stand by you even when the world tries to tell us otherwise." My voice cracked at the end, but it didn't matter. The tears in his eyes told me he heard every syllable. The priest asked for objections. A pause, thick and trembling, filled the room. I held my breath. My gaze flicked toward Alina. She shifted in her seat, her lips parting as if to speak. The entire church seemed to freeze. But then she caught Daniel's steady gaze, cold, unflinching, and her mouth snapped shut. "Then I now pronounce you husband and wife." Applause broke out. Relief washed over me. Daniel kissed me, and the world disappeared for a moment. But the reckoning wasn't over. Not yet. The reception hall glittered with lights and laughter. Glasses clinked, music swelled, and for the first time in years I felt surrounded by genuine joy. Guests congratulated us, complimented the food, danced with abandon. And then came the speeches. My father droned about tradition. My mother spoke about family, her words polished, her eyes avoiding mine. Finally, Daniel stood, thanking everyone for coming, his voice warm and full. Then it was my turn. I rose, glass in hand, heart pounding, but voice steady. "I want to thank all of you for being here today, for celebrating love with us. Love is the reason we're all gathered. It's what binds us, lifts us, makes life worth living." I paused, letting the words sink. "And it's something I will never again let anyone tell me I don't deserve." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Alina stiffened visibly. I continued, gaze fixed on her. Some of you know the kind of doubts I faced. The voices that told me I was less, that I wasn't enough, that happiness was for others, but not for me. Sometimes those voices came from outside. Sometimes, closer to home, my throat tightened, but I pressed on. But today, standing beside Daniel, I know the truth. I am worthy. I am loved. And no one, no matter who they are, can take that from me. Gasps and whispers spread like wildfire. People glanced at Alina, at my parents, at each other. I raised my glass higher. To love that cannot be stolen. To love that chooses every single day. To Daniel. The room erupted in applause. Glasses clinked. Cheers rang out. Daniel kissed my cheek, pride shining in his eyes. And Alina. She sat frozen, her smile brittle, her cheeks flushed. The spotlight she always demanded was now a burning glare she couldn't escape. Later, as guests danced, Alina cornered me near the restroom. Her mask had slipped. Her eyes burned with rage. "How dare you?" she hissed. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." I met her fury with calm. "You humiliated yourself when you tried to sabotage me." She stepped closer. "You'll regret this, Bella. You think he'll stay with you forever? Men like him." I cut her off. "No, you don't get to speak about him. Not after what you did." Her face paled. "He told you." "Yes," I said. "He told me about Thanksgiving. About your kiss. About every poisonous word you tried to plant between us. And guess what? It didn't work. It only made us stronger." She recoiled as if slapped. "You spent your whole life trying to convince me I was small," I continued. My voice firm, loud enough for a few nearby guests to glance over. But today, everyone saw the truth. I am not small. I am not weak. And I don't need your permission to be loved. For once, Alina had no reply. Her mouth opened, closed, then stayed shut. I turned and walked away, my head high. The fallout was swift. Word spread through the family about what she'd said, what she'd done. My parents tried to spin it, but whispers traveled faster than excuses. Cousins pulled me aside to say, "We always knew something was off with her." Old friends hugged me tighter, telling me I was brave. Alina, once the shining star, now stood in the shadows exactly where she had tried to keep me all these years. And me. I danced. I laughed. I held Daniel close and let the music carry me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by her or by their expectations. I was defined by love. Real, chosen, unwavering love. And it was mine. The days after the wedding felt like stepping into a new world. One I had always hoped existed, but had never dared to believe was mine. The sunlight seemed different, warmer somehow. The air I breathed felt lighter. I wasn't just Bella, the overlooked little sister, the family's shadow. I was Bella, a woman who had stood her ground, spoken her truth, and claimed her happiness without apology. Daniel and I left for our honeymoon, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the constant tug of my family's judgment. No critical eyes. No sharp remarks. Just us. Just love. And I kept replaying that moment at the reception when I'd looked Alina in the eye and told the world that I was worthy. It wasn't just for them. It was for me. It would be easy to say I cut my family off completely, but life is rarely that clean. My parents reached out. Of course, my mother with her carefully chosen words about misunderstandings. My father with gruff silence that spoke louder than his few sentences. But I didn't rush to smooth things over like I once would have. I didn't beg for harmony. I let the silence stretch, let them feel the absence of my compliance. For the first time, they had to face me as I was not the girl desperate for approval, but the woman unwilling to accept disrespect. And Alina. She tried to reach me once. A long text, full of half apologies and excuses, saying she hadn't meant it, saying she was only protecting me. I read it, then I deleted it. Because some wounds don't need her version of healing. They need distance. They need boundaries. They need the kind of silence that says, "I will not let you hurt me again." What I learned through it all was simple, but it had taken me a lifetime to see. Love isn't something you earn by being perfect, or quiet, or small enough to fit someone else's shadow. Love isn't a prize given to the golden child or withheld from the one deemed too sensitive. Love is something you deserve simply by being human, by being open, by daring to choose it and give it back. And I had spent too long believing Elena's version of me, the girl unworthy of love, the girl destined to be second. But Daniel's steady gaze, his unshaken choice of me, showed me the truth. I had always been worthy. I just needed to believe it myself. Now when I think of my sister's words, "You don't deserve love," they don't sting the way they once did. They remind me of who I was before I broke free, of the girl who doubted, who bowed her head, who accepted less. And they remind me of the turning point, the moment I finally said no. The moment I finally stood tall, the moment I chose myself. Because the truth is, my sister was wrong. I do deserve love. I deserve the kind of love that lifts instead of crushes, that chooses instead of compares, that heals instead of wounds. And I found it. So if you're listening to my story, if you've ever been made to feel small, overlooked, unworthy, hear me when I say this. You are not defined by someone else's jealousy. You are not broken because of someone else's cruelty. You are worthy of love, of joy, of a life where you are seen, truly seen. And if anyone dares to tell you otherwise, remember my story. Remember the girl who was told she didn't deserve love and then stood up in front of the world and proved them wrong. Because in the end, the sweetest revenge wasn't anger or bitterness. It was happiness. It was love. It was freedom, and that was my story. The day my sister told me I didn't deserve love and I proved her wrong. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit that like button and show your support. It helps more people find these stories of struggle, betrayal, and justice. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next powerful tale we share. And I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone close try to tear you down? How did you rise above it? Share your story in the comments below. Remember, no matter what anyone says, you do deserve love, always.